What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Man, I'm excited today because there is some news, or at least some reports that have come out now that kind of get me excited, because it's something I've been talking about for a while since we heard about that Crash and Sane Trilogy, another franchise that I've wanted to come out to be remastered in a collection very similar to Crash that Activision can do. We're finally getting actual reports that it appears to be on track. I'm excited. We're going to talk about Spyro today. That's what we're going to do. That's later on in the show, though. We have to go over a few other things, including another remaster from a little while ago, a little longer ago. And then we get, well, some actual insight into Bayonetta's development and why, in this case, Platinum Games seems to just outright love Nintendo. So let's get started. All right, first let's start with Blob. It is coming to the Nintendo Switch. This was put out in a press release by THQ Nordic. No actual release date, no pricing that I've seen, but they did send box art shots out to everyone, so it is going to be physically released in stores, and it's also going to have a digital release, of course. The big question was the retail, the physical end. Yes, there will be a box copy on store shelves. You can walk in, you can buy it. This, of course, appears to be a remaster of the game that was released in 2008 on the Nintendo Wii, the original Wii. I actually missed out on this game. I did not play it because at the time I was really into my 360. The 360 took over that generation for me. I did eventually kind of fall more into the PS3 as we got towards the end of the life cycles, because I think the PS3 did turn out to be the better overall system. But then I was really into the 360 and I missed out on this game completely. So I'll be excited to try it out for the first time on the Nintendo Switch. We're still waiting for gameplay footage or anything like that, because of course there will be a lot of comparisons, but based on what the Wii could do and then what the Switch can do now, it should be a much better looking game overall. Of course, it'll be high def and everything. They'll probably just get stripped 1080p out of it with better visuals and clarity and everything. So it'll be interesting to see if they do anything with the controls using the Joy-Con controllers or anything else. But of course, it'll also be portable, so this should be a lot of fun to see. I did see people say they enjoyed it a lot back in 2008. So I'm looking forward to have some fun with this game for the first time. I don't think I'll go back and check it out on the Wii, because at this point I'll just wait for it to come out on the Switch. That's pretty cool. And I'm also curious if any other companies might pull their Wii games off of what they did on the Wii and then maybe remaster them. This was kind of out of left field. This I didn't expect. I don't know if anyone else did. I did not expect Blob to just randomly say, show up, hey, we're remastering it, THQ Nordic, and it's coming out later on this year. So we'll see when a release date shows up, any gameplay footage. Should be interesting to actually compare a Switch game to a Wii game, because those comparisons are coming. Next up, let's get into Bayonetta, because on Twitter, as you can see here, Hideki Kamiya, who, by the way, has blocked me on Twitter. I don't know what happened. I think I quoted him at one point because he quoted me, but it wasn't my actual quote. It was a very confusing situation, but if you read his rules, if you quote him, he pretty much blocks you. So I can't actually read his tweets, and I had to go on a website to read over it. But interestingly enough, he decided to go into the backstory of Bayonetta 2 specifically, and then now Bayonetta 3. Fans have had a lot of questions. If you haven't seen it on Twitter, people don't seem happy that it's just on the Switch. It's a weird thing. Buy every system, so you never have to go through this. But go buy a PS4, go buy an Xbox, go buy a Switch. You don't have this problem. People are mad that it's not on every system or another system. It's just on the Switch. But he does go into the backstory as to why it's just on the Switch, and you know what? It makes perfect sense. It's because Nintendo is funding it. It's basically, at this point, Bayonetta has pretty much become their IP, and he goes in the backstory. Bayonetta 2 was actually a multi-platform game originally, but it seemed like funding either dried up halfway through, it kind of got put on the shelf for a little bit, and then here comes Nintendo. They fund it to the finish line, and it just goes on the Wii U and now onto the Switch. And according to, in this case, Platinum Games, it is, well, a Nintendo and a Sega IP shared. And now Bayonetta 3 is exclusively funded by Nintendo, which is pretty interesting, because yes, it does seem with Bayonetta 3 being completely funded by Nintendo, Bayonetta's in Smash, there's amiibos. It seems like, yes, this is, well, in this case, it's Nintendo's property basically now. So Sega, of course, has some kind of say in the character and the licensing and everything, but it seems like this will, going forward, I mean, we're going to see how this one sells. Bayonetta isn't like a very expensive game to make, so it doesn't need a ton of sales. I do think this is going to be the best performing Bayonetta, like completely, I would think, because while the first one didn't do too well, the second one did okay on the limited audience of the Wii U. The Switch and Bayonetta 3 have a chance to really push those games out, and I do expect it to eclipse 1 million without too much issue. That's one I could see probably closing on 2 million, probably past that. So that would be a big success for it, and that would probably have them look at it and say, let's keep it going, let's get Bayonetta 4. It's basically their Devil May Cry. It's their action game for a mature audience, something they could say, look, we do have mature games on the Switch, at this point. So it's pretty cool to see, and it's neat to really go into the backstory. Very, very long string of tweets. Somebody actually made a Twitter Moments for it, so you can go back, read through it if you're just curious of the backstory of Bayonetta's development. Next up, I want to touch on Kingdom Hearts 3 very briefly. If you remember, there were a lot of reports going around. I even kind of mentioned it when we talked about it before for D23, where there was this report going around that apparently Square was going to announce the overall release date for Kingdom Hearts 3 at E3. And while I couldn't really nail down a specific source for it, it seems like DualShockers actually went out, reached out to Square to see if this is the case, and then they even brought the actual tweet to my attention, because that rumor, or at least that report, flew around everywhere. Everyone was pretty much talking about it. There was a tweet that went out in Japanese that was translated. It seemed to be more of a speculation about Kingdom Hearts 3 having its release date revealed at E3, but DualShockers did reach out, in this case to Square, asked them, is this actually happening? Did you say this is happening? According to Square Enix, that's not the case. Or at least, that's not the case right now they've made publicly available. Right now, we believe E3 will probably be where they show the release date. However, they could do it ahead of that and then use E3 to show off one big, massive world or something to finish it all off, the big finale as to a world that we're going to see. Kind of like how they did Monsters, Inc. at the D23 Japan, but maybe they have something really cool behind closed doors that we don't know about, and they show it off there, and then it's a mad sprint to the release date. I still think it's in November, but there you go. We still don't know when the release date's going to be revealed. We kind of assume it's going to be E3 or in a press release before then, and then E3 is a big blowout for Kingdom Hearts from Square. All right, let's get into EA and Star Wars. It's a combination people have not been too fond of, right? People are not happy with EA's really treatment of the Star Wars universe currently in video games. They get rid of Visceral Studios, who is working on that pure single-player cinematic kind of gameplay that was going to be, I guess, kind of like an Uncharted, sort of, where they had Uncharted 2 developer and everyone there. They were working through this big, very story-driven experience. They cancel it, they move it over to another studio. They're going to use different assets and stuff from it. Seem to have pushed it back beyond 2019, or maybe in 2019, we don't really know. And of course, we find out what happens to Battlefront 2, loot box controversy, it's a mess, even to the point where the government's pretty much stepping in now because of how massively blown up this has become. And it looks like, at least according to some reports, they might be shopping the Star Wars brand back out and seeing if they could find another company to kind of take the reins. And this was in a report from Cinelinx.com, where they say multiple sources confirmed to them that Disney and Lucasfilm reached out to Ubisoft and Activision about making Star Wars games. And this is kind of interesting. Really, it comes down to there are only so many AAA developers, like big AAA third-party developers, that can kind of take over this. We saw that chart from Ubisoft themselves that showed them, EA, Activision, and Take-Two as like the 4 remaining companies that put out yearly AAA games. Games with big budgets. They think they put it up as like a $100 million budget to them as a AAA game. And of course, Star Wars, Disney, Lucasfilms, they want a new Star Wars game pretty much every year because they're going to be doing, in this case, it seems to anyway, a movie every year, almost 2 movies every year or something. It's crazy, but they want that Star Wars action to keep happening. They want Star Wars merchandise, games, movies, books, everything. They want it constantly because they put out a lot of money, but the Star Wars universe generates unlimited money. People just do not get tired of Star Wars. And after seeing how EA decided to treat the franchise by, of course, somehow, you give probably the easiest franchise to sell. I mean, you put Star Wars in a video game, it's going to sell easy, right? But they have to put loot boxes in, they get the government looking at them sideways, it's gambling, it's generated a controversy that Disney does not seem to want, as we heard, where they everybody talked about this, right? Where they show up and they slap them down and they say, get those out of there, and they pull the loot boxes out. They're going back in. According to them, though, Ubisoft and Activision have been contacted about possibly taking the reins of the Star Wars license. Will that happen? I'm not sure. These just seem to be them reaching out and seeing, can you do it, right? Now, my real thought was Ubisoft, it would be probably the best one out of the companies that they've talked to, right? They have a good relationship with Nintendo. They have a good relationship with Sony, Microsoft, pretty much everyone. Whereas EA is still kind of like with Nintendo. But we heard about that Rogue Squadron game that was floating around, right? I feel like, honestly, if Ubisoft takes over the Star Wars license, one of the things they'd probably do is they get Rogue Squadron and get that done and put it on Nintendo systems. That's an easy one to put out. And then they probably would work through stuff that maybe is more like a single-player style game, and maybe they would take something similar to Battlefront and make it. But I think they would probably be the best one out of the ones they talked about. Loot boxes are going to be in any one you probably do. It just really depends on how much it affects, I think, gameplay at this point. EA, they just happen to step over the line a bit. Next up, let's talk about Spyro, because this got me really excited. If you guys remember, whenever I talked about Crash Bandicoot and Sane Trilogy, I always bring up Spyro. I'm always like, you know what'd be great? What if they took Spyro and did the exact same job, remaster him? Because Activision, of course, has the rights to that as well. We've seen it in Skylanders, right? Where they pretty much took Spyro and just threw him into the Skylanders mix, and they're like, hey, look, Spyro, you know, now buy these other Skylanders. So he was kind of the mascot for a while for the Skylanders figures, and now it sounds like, this is according to Kotaku, Laura Kate Dale, that it is happening. There is a Spyro remaster in the works, and we'll actually find out about it next month. So March 2018, we'll find out about it, and they're looking for a third quarter release. I've heard possibly September. That at least makes sense, kind of beat the holiday rush when the big blockbuster games are come out. That'll be a smaller game like the Crash and Sane Trilogy, probably like a $40 game, right? Spyro could get lost in the mix if it comes out in November around all these. Kingdom Hearts is going to be in there. Call of Duty will be in there. There's a new Battlefield kind of lurking in the shadows. It makes more sense to put it out in September, third quarter, get it out. People will buy Spyro. Oh man, I'm so excited. Now, in this article, they also talked about different Spyros, the ones that they expect to be in there, and they're kind of the ones I think that most of us would expect. They detailed Spyro the Dragon, of course, just the original one, Ripto's Rage, and Year of the Dragon, and what was really cool here that I read through this article and saw, it appears that they will also add cut content, stuff that maybe we missed out on, maybe levels that were completely scrapped and left on the cutting room floor, maybe concept art. There's a lot of stuff that they could, of course, add to this, and it makes me really excited. Of course, they'll have the visuals similar to what they did with Crash, where they did a full makeover for him and everything. And I gotta tell you, I like the Spyro games a lot, and I think there are a lot of people right now who have never played them, and this is worth every penny of $40. It really is. The Spyro games, I think, were really good. Now, you might be asking, what system would it be on, or systems? It technically, when it's all said and done, it appears to be on a lot of systems, not just one, but for the time being, it will have that year exclusivity deal that Crash had with PlayStation. So Sony appears to be buying at least a chunk of the development or marketing costs to where they will get like a year of it, just like Crash did. It seems like Crash is going to be going to the other systems in a few months. We'll hear about it because that's when that year of exclusivity is up. You can't say anything about any of these games when there's exclusivity for one system because it could cause people not to buy it on a system. But Crash did well. I expect Spyro to do well, and I'm very excited to hear about it next month. I hope this report is correct. They are very specific in it. Kotaku has been very credible recently when it comes to a lot of this stuff, so I, like many, am excited, and I really want to see what it looks like. I hope they don't get it doesn't get too much like how the Skylander art came out. I hope they take the original stuff, they're faithful to it, and they kind of remaster all of that, because I am excited, and I have a feeling some of you guys watching, you are too. In our last bit of news, let's quickly talk about Monster Hunter World, because we did have an interview with the Capcom president where he talked a bit about the Switch and Monster Hunter, because I think we all know Switch owners are getting a little restless when it comes to Monster Hunter. I mean, think about it. There's a Monster Hunter game in Japan that is still not localized outside of Japan. Monster Hunter World is, well, everywhere right now on the PS4 and the Xbox One. You can buy it, you can play it, but still nothing yet for the Switch. And that has a little frustrated. So of course, they were asked about Monster Hunter World and the Switch possibly in this interview. And this was an interview with Toyo Kazai where they basically asked them, and this was all translated through Google, so you can kind of understand why I'm slightly hesitant about it, but it seems pretty straightforward and at least makes sense to this degree. They pretty much talk about how they developed it over the course of 3 to 4 years, and it's as it is now, it's going to be difficult to bring over to the Nintendo Switch. I mean, think about it this way. It has a hard enough time running on the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, so if they have to move it to the Switch, there will have to be some compromises and stuff they'd have to do, and to me, does that make sense? Because we're still waiting for it on the PC. It's not even ready for the PC. Basically what they're saying here is, look, it's a big project, it would take a lot to get on the Switch, and they even probably ask themselves, is it worth getting it on the Switch when we could probably just make an entirely new game for the Switch. You know, a new Monster Hunter game. If they're smart, they should have 2 different lines of Monster Hunter games going. Or maybe they'll continue to support World for a while with DLC and stuff. That might be a game that they only want to produce one of and then keep it going with live services and stuff that we keep hearing about from other companies. What Nintendo fans need to be asking them is, where's Monster Hunter Double Cross? Why is that not in the US? Why is that not in Europe? Why is it stuck in Japan? That's a game that needs to leave Japan and go everywhere. I know it's region free, but I mean, it's not translated from what I've seen, so why not get that localized, bring it out of Japan, and then most Switch fans will at least be happy because they have a Monster Hunter game. And then at that point, work on Monster Hunter series for the Switch and continue to support Monster Hunter World, and then everybody has a Monster Hunter game. It's perfect. Like, seriously, that would work fine. I mean, we're not even at the point where it's ready for PC because they want to continue optimizing it. That is to tell you all you need to know about how, I don't want to say poorly made the game is, but it's not optimized well. I mean, the Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro have a hard time running it. Like, my PS4 Pro gets super loud, and it definitely doesn't run at 60 frames really anywhere near it most times when you're fighting monsters and everything. So I don't really know how well it would run on the Switch, and honestly, I don't really know why they would spend the development time doing that when they can just make a brand new game for the Switch, sell it, probably sell a ton of copies, and then they're selling Monster Hunter World and then Monster Hunter to just everyone. So why not just do that? Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for Newswave today. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, guys. It really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave a bunch of comments down below. Maybe we'll talk about Monster Hunter and Capcom on the Switch. Maybe you're thinking the same thing, or maybe you just want World. Maybe you want World on the Switch. That's fine too. I don't think it's going to happen. I think they'd rather either localize Double Cross, maybe a 3DS and a Switch double pack or something, or just make a new Monster Hunter game. Also, let me know what you think about Spyro, the Spyro Collection. That's got to be exciting. Maybe you're thinking about Kingdom Hearts 3 and how you're worried that it's not going to be a 2018 release. I think it still will. And I think we'll actually find out the release date ahead of E3, and E3 will be one big celebration to show off one crazy world that we don't know about. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.